Welcome, everyone. I'm Madeline Nonno, President and CEO of the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media. With me is our esteemed ASL interpreter, Joe Brulette. Please remember to pin your video if you would like to keep Joe on screen throughout our event. And if you would like to see the closed captioning, please make sure to turn that on at the bottom of your screen. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that in Los Angeles, we are currently on the traditional lands of the Chumash peoples. I want to recognize that we are all connected with one another and that the ground beneath my feet is historically the home of Indigenous peoples. We also want to thank our partners at Netflix, and we are so excited to have this conversation about our favorite new show, Ada Twist. So without further ado, I want to introduce Peabody, Emmy, and NAACP Award winner, Chris Nee, and also Peabody Award winner, showrunner, also executive producer, Kerri Grant. Hello.
Hello.
We're so excited to be here.
Yay. Oh my God, so much to talk about, so much to talk about. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. What inspired you about the books, of all the things that you could develop, because you are just a creative genius machine? What inspired you to base your next show on the book series, the fabulous book series by Andrea Beatty with the illustrations from David Roberts?
You know, like anyone in our business, I had seen the books and the design of them and what the content was. They were just fantastic. They really stood out. And when I got to Netflix, Netflix had really been sniffing around the book series because they saw something really interesting in it. But I have to be honest, so were the Obamas, and Higher Ground and Mrs. Obama had actually, requested that I consider taking on this project. And, I serve at the pleasure of the First Lady. And so, but I will be honest, I did not say yes right away. And I'm sure we'll talk some about this, but I wasn't sure if like a pure science show was the right thing for me, right? Like what I didn't want to do was make the show that was 2 tablespoons of this and 1 teaspoon of this. That didn't feel like the place where like I was necessarily the best person out of all of the people who could do this. I'm such an emotional writer and I love sort of, things that are very much centered in a kid's point of view. And in early development, there was a conversation that we had where we landed on the idea of the emotions of science. That science is actually a discipline that builds into it the importance of failure, that grit is so vital to that discipline, and the idea that if you were to apply scientific thinking to anything in your life, it provides you with a different way of breaking down information. And the last thing I'll say, because we got to talk to Kerri, is we were in a moment in this world where science felt under attack and not valued in the same way. And so I'm always looking for shows that have some underlying meaning for me, and that certainly made it attractive. So for me, I took it on and developed it, worked with the Obamas, but I always knew that I wanted that I wouldn't be show running it, and I knew who I wanted to do that. So we had been courting Kerri from the beginning to sort of take this project on.
Great. So Kerri, so I wanted you to know I wore my polka dots, my Ada polka dots
nice.
Today. I want to build on what Chris was saying. I mean, you were talking about science emotion, but for me, there were very specific themes, that came out. For example, you mentioned, failures, happy accidents. I love the sentence, try different ways until one, works. Failure as your best friend. So there's very specific, themes. And also you had to think about the composition of integrating live action with animation and music. I won't sing because you will all run off this note, but the music is so catchy in the tune. So unpack the development for us. Once you decided, everybody, Chris and Kerri have known each other forever. Kerri's written everything that's worthwhile knowing about in kids. So there's a long, business partnership there. But just unpack us how you actually developed the show, the composition of the show, the themes.
Go ahead, Kerri.
I think from the beginning, we had a few core themes that we knew we wanted to develop and work with. So you brought up failure, and that was a really big one from the very beginning. And I let Chris speak more to this, but from my understanding, when Chris and Mrs. Obama were talking about it, failure as kind of a central theme in the show was a big deal, just to kind of show kids that failure is actually a part of the process and doesn't have to be the end of anything. It's all about the resilience. It's all about picking yourself back up and continuing. And that science is kind of a discipline that actually celebrates that and doesn't think of it as a loss. So we knew from the very beginning that failure was a core theme of the show. So we knew we wanted songs, because who doesn't like songs and dancing, right? So we knew we wanted songs. We knew we wanted one of the songs to really explore that theme of failure. So in kind of developing the show, in some ways things happened one at a time, and in some ways it happened all together. So we knew we wanted to talk about science. We knew we wanted to talk about the emotions of science. We knew we wanted it to be a kid character-driven show. We knew we wanted it to be about a family and these kids that you wanted to hang out with, and you could see yourself being friends with, you could see yourself being. And we wanted to show that science is all around you in the world. And I think that that's when we've kind of cracked that, then it opened up a world of possibilities for us. We knew we wanted to talk about brainstorming and throwing ideas back and forth as a part of the process of getting stuff done and figuring stuff out. We knew one of the songs in the show is a song called I Give Up, and that's the failure song. So when a character is experiencing a down moment, an experiment isn't working out or something isn't happening as they want it to, Ada is a bit of a perfectionist. So something, she wants something to be perfect and then it doesn't work out and she wants to give up, and then she sings, I give up. I won't sing either because everyone will also run away from this panel. I don't want that to happen. But then in the second half of the song, the other kids come in and encourage that character not to give up and to keep going. And then we knew we wanted to explore other themes, just from the show as we were developing it, and some directly, connected to the book. So for instance, we have a song called the Why Song, and that's a song that was inspired directly from the books, but also just from science, asking questions. One of the big things about Ada, and one of the things that drew me to it, were her asking the question why. She didn't speak until she was 3. And then when she did, the first word she spoke was why, and asking a million questions and wanting to get the answers. So we also kind of pinpointed, what would be cool to have a why song where we encourage asking of questions. And then, so that's kind of how it all developed. It all kind of developed sort of one at a time, and also just kind of all came together as we were in the process of developing the show.
Yeah, and I would say that we knew that we wanted a show that was going to feel like it was really relatable, so the kids could feel like they could go out into their backyard and experience what Ada and her friends were experiencing. But then there are sort of fantasy layers where we get to go into bigger spaces. But in all of that, as you know, Madeline, I did a panel with you guys and with If Then, and it was a panel of female scientists, and there were a couple of things that I really took away. And I knew that I was in the process of developing Ada at the time. And I remembered there being a discussion about, obviously the lack of diversity in the sciences was clear, but that one of the decision-making moments seemed to be that girls looked at scientists and thought, scientists are men, generally white men in lab coats, who are really antisocial. And one of the other panelists on that panel was this amazing young woman who is a shark researcher in the Cook Islands. Exactly. And so, the idea also of like sort of attaching this live action was I just wanted to also show that there were so many different ways that one could be a scientist. And so we are also always looking at the material and thinking like, what is the discipline of science that doesn't feel like what you think is a science career that this could possibly attach to, because we wanted to really expand that sense of that being a scientist isn't just one thing, and that felt really, really important to us.
And just to level
music, Michelle Lewis, Kay Hanley, and Dan Petty, who did all the music for Doc McStuffins, and did some of the music on Vampirina. And who else would we go to work with us for music but them?
And just one more on music. So how did you get Renee Elise Goldberry to sing the theme song? And is there a CD that our audience should know about that they just want all the music from A to Twist, that it's on someplace we can get music?
You know how you get anyone you want on a show like this is you ask Higher Ground, the Obama's company. It is really nice producing with them. I think there are a lot of people we could have gotten anyway, but what happens is those guys go make the ask, and that was an easy yes.
That's definitely one way. So what about a CD, the music? If everybody wanted to listen to all the fabulous songs and sing along, is that
it is out? Yes, I think you can find it in all the places you can find music. But yes, the music is all out.
Oh, great. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the cast. You have an amazing cast. I would love for you to talk about the composition of the characters, who's playing them. And then also, I noticed very intently, there was a lot of female directors. So I'd like you to talk about that. Also, we know diversity, equity, inclusion is at the heart of everything that you and Kerri have done together. So how did all that come into the soup mix, which became A to Twist? And that's for both of you to chime in.
Kerri, go.
Well, okay, so from the beginning, we knew that we wanted, when we were casting, we kind of started with the core kids and Ada's family. So we knew we wanted, we had worked with Taye Diggs before. He played a toy on Doc McStuffins. And you cannot deny that voice.
And it was the only time that all the writers came into the record studio, if I recall, was to see Taye in the early years. So apparently we've never forgotten that.
Yes. Yes. And you really can't deny that voice. So we thought, I think it was Chris who had said, what about Taye Diggs, to play the dad? And I was definitely on board, no objections from me on that. And we were really happy when he said yes. And then we were thinking about mom twists, we wanted the mom character to be strong, warm, nurturing. We kind of developed her, took the books as a starting point to develop her, and then developed her into what you see on the screen today. And we think that Susan Kelechi Watson, who plays Mom Twist, perfectly captures those qualities. Her voice is wonderful and textured and amazing. And she, is that warm, nurturing, strong, playful mom, smart, like all of those things that we wanted to get across. And we were really happy when she said yes. And then it was just a matter of going out to find the kids. So we did, a really extensive audition process, and then slowly identified each kid who just happened to be so perfect in all of their roles, like really special, brought something like what we had envisioned for the character, but a little something extra, a little something extra, a little surprising. And then we knew for our other characters, we wanted to show, like, it was sort of a variety of ways that we cast, Great Aunt Rose is a really prominent character in the Rosie books. And so we knew that was an important role for us that we wanted to cast. And when the idea of Margot Martindale came up to play her, everyone was on board with that. Like that
voice, you could live inside that voice.
Yeah, what a beautiful instrument, Margot Martindale's voice is. And again, she just kind of perfectly encapsulates that role of Great Aunt Rose, Great Aunt Rose that Rosie looks up to, that Rosie is named after. And a huge role, plays a huge role in her life. And her voice captures all of that.
And I would also say that one of the things we were really looking at is that we knew that we had 3 different kids. We had 3 different families. I'm suddenly getting feedback. I don't know if anyone else is, but okay, it's just me. So we wanted to make sure that we were looking at all different kinds of diversity, right? And one of the things that it was really the Higher Ground team was very, very cognizant of socioeconomic diversity. It was interesting because when you look in the books, the twist house is so beautifully designed, and it would have been wrong to try to sort of take that away, because it's such a absolutely essential piece, I think, of the book series. But it sort of places them in a socioeconomic space. And so we wanted to make sure that all of the families were representing really different situations. And then one of the things that was, as a divorced parent, that was really, really important to me is that I haven't seen a lot of really lovely representations of co-parenting. So we very specifically had Iggy end up with divorced parents, but we also have multiple episodes where what you see is if one of the parents is having a problem with something, Iggy may call the other parent to help figure it out. And you see them as a family where if one is coming to pick up Iggy, they might stay for a meal. And that stuff is so important to me because I don't think that representation is around a lot. Rosie's being raised by a single mom who's a pilot and sometimes has to figure out things for childcare. Like these kinds of softening the edges of perfection that often end up in series, I think is really, really important.
So a few things, many things jumped out at me, but I did like, what we have seen in our research is that more often the fathers are always portrayed as being kind of bumbling idiots. And what I did like is that all the fathers were loving, caring, showed emotion, and contributed. I thought that was great. I thought the way that the moms all had, interesting, careers. I thought these are just signals. And then I'd love for you, just because I'm a fangirl, talk about, you've had some amazing guest stars like Ali Wong and George Takei. And how did that all come about? Did people just say, hey, Chris, Kerri, can we drop by? Can you drop us in?
No, we just kept going out with our #1 wish list. And again, look, I think our work at this point, we actually do okay casting on our own, to be honest. But why would we when that piece of it, when we're going for celebrities, it was really easy to have the Obama's team write the letter. And you do, for all the right reasons, I understand it. You get a lot of attention with that. So then I think Kerri had a lot of fun. And she's great at really thinking outside of the box in terms of who could play what. But you've had a lot of fun casting.
Definitely, always going for the pie in the sky.
Yeah,
always shooting for the, why not? Who's the ideal person that we'd want to play this role? George Takei was a great get. We have a lot of sci-fi fans who work on the show. And who are just a fan of him. And Ali Wong, we were really ecstatic when we got her to play the role of Cherry Chen. And, it's just, again, like Chris said, it's just really important to have representation across the board on the show in as wide a spectrum as possible. So we just kept really thinking about these characters and then who ideally we want to play them, based on what we know of them in the real world. And of course their performances as actors and then again, just shooting for the stars.
Well, I want to go back to the science of it for a minute because, and this has to do with on-screen and then the scientists. So, we know, as when you heard Jess Cramp, talking about it, is that collaboration, this idea of collaboration, that to be a scientist, we always joke about that trope about the lone female scientist with the lab coat in the dark. She can't have a beer. She can't have a boyfriend. She's going to, which is what turns girls, women off to STEM. And one, just the composition of the show is about collaboration. And then the other thing that jumped out at me is each one of the scientists that you picked was not sitting in a lab. You have the gal who's out in the desert, you've got, the farm bot, whatever. So can you talk a little bit about this theme about collaboration? I do want you to talk a little bit about how you cherry picked some of the scientists.
Kerri, you can talk about it too. What I would say is that it's actually, I think, worth noting, this entire series was done during the pandemic. So Kerri and I were supposed to get on a plane the week after everything shut down and go to our studio in Dublin for the first time. That obviously was canceled. And so we never recorded with people, like everything was done in that way. So to be honest, like Jess Cramp, we wanted to be one of the scientists, but we ended up with all California scientists because that's what we could do during the period of time. But yeah, it was incredibly important to show all of these. One of my favorite conversations, Kerri, and maybe you can talk about it, was with our consultants when we said, like, how do we go about figuring out this? Like, can you give us a list of science things you'd like us to cover? And they were like, just write whatever story you want. Science is everywhere. And we'll tell you what the science is. And that's also really the theme of that's one of the themes of the show, is actually that science is in every single thing you do. So they were just like, you don't have to reverse engineer anything. We'll tell you what it is. Science is in t-shirts and jeans. It's studying smelly cheese. It's it's robots, which is obvious, but it's all kinds of not obvious things too. And just by showing that, I think we're expanding sort of the vision of what not only what you can be, but actually what the thing is, because I think we have a very monolithic idea of scientist.
Yeah, and I'll also add that especially with the idea, I think from the beginning, that Chris always talked about, was purposefully showing that science doesn't have to happen in a lab. So wherever wherever the scientist is, that's where their lab is. And then that kind of filters into the show as well, with Ada and her lab bag, that she can carry everywhere so that her lab can be anywhere. And then there's a magical transition that happens in the show that takes the kids into the lab. So wherever they are, that's where their lab is. And as far as picking the scientists, our partners, Higher Ground, and especially give a shout out to Alex, who we worked really closely with at Higher Ground, really kind of spearheaded that whole process of choosing the scientists. And we were really committed from the beginning of showing all types of scientists, all races, all, genders, in terms of ability. We just really wanted to show that scientists look like everyone. Yeah. And science happens everywhere. And that was a really important kind of mission that we had, set out with from the very beginning.
So before, we're going to jump to Q&A in about a minute, but can you talk about what's been the impact? What kind of feedback are you getting? How are girls responding? How are parents responding?
I've been getting great feedback. Everyone who at least approaches me just to express how much, what they think of the show, it has been great. People are saying that not only do parents love it, but they're, actually other way around. Not only do kids love it, but parents love it too. Grownups can sit and watch a show with their kids and really enjoy it and learn something. I love that there's something for everyone really in the show. There's the science, the hardcore science, there's the colors, the fun adventures they go on, the songs. We really have an interplay of 3D animation and 2D animation working well together, especially in their brainstorm spaces that really visually represents the different kids and their different thought processes and how they think and how they, move through the world. And and parents and kids also love the live action. They love, kind of, seeing the real world application to the fun adventures that we are showing in the series. So it's been great.
Yeah, Kerri, I'm actually going to cede back to you because I'm just curious if you can talk. I always really just what the show means to you and what attracted you to the series and got you excited about doing it, because I think it's powerful.
Yeah. So, for me, when I read the books, when I first read Ada, I was really struck by also how beautiful it was, in terms of the designs and all of that. Like, that struck me, but also kind of the poetry of it, the way it was written. And again, the thing that sticks out to me the most is Ada not speaking until she was ready. And then when she was ready, the question she asked was why. And I, strongly identified with that as somebody who also asked a lot of questions growing up. I remember my track coach in high school, she'd ask us to do something and I would say why, she hated that, like, why are you always asking so many questions? And so I loved the idea of this little Black girl, living her life, living her best life, asking the questions and wanting to know all the answers. And also her parents, like, yeah, they were the very real frustration that they felt, in the books, from her writing on the walls and, destroying the walls and the furniture with her equations and her questions. And then in the end, coming to a place where they were like, okay, this is our kid, this is our child, this is what she loves, this is her passion, and we are going to support her. So I loved Ada, the way the books were written, the way they were illustrated, the distinct style of it, and then just the family, and in all of them, like Iggy's family, similar situation, Rosie's family, raised by a lot of, in the book, she's raised by a series of aunts and uncles and just people. And that is also a lot of, that's the reality also for a lot of kids. So all of those things together just really, I love when, a mystery, a riddle, a puzzle, a quest, like just all of the nuance and charm from the books, and really wanted the series to keep that element, to keep the charm of it and the style and everything that the books are known for and what people love about the books, and then just expanding on it in the TV series.
Yeah. We're so thrilled that you have brought it to life, and audiences all over the world will continue to enjoy it. And I'm going to bring on Lisa Emery, our Director of Digital Media, who's been culling through all the questions. Lisa, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this discussion. There's been some really great conversation happening in the chat. And of course, thank you, Kerri and Chris, for joining us today. So yeah, I know we just talked a lot of love for the author, Andrea, obviously, that you both loved her books. Donna wanted to know, in creating the series, did you interact with her a lot? And how closely did you work with her, and how?
So I actually have a little bit of a thing when I'm taking on an existing book that I kind of want to establish a level of respect, but also an ability to move on our own. Because at the end of the day, generally books, and I've done both sort of a smaller picture book, like there's actually not enough in there. We churn through so much more story. I want to make sure we're on the same page, but also be able to move forward and move into territory that didn't exactly exist in the book. So I met with Andrea. We had a really great early conversation. There was sort of like background conversation so that, she was reading everything, I think at like a second draft. So if anything really bumped her, but it was not a regular conversation. And that's sort of intentional on my part. but it is, I cannot say that it was maybe the most gratifying thing was getting to the end and knowing how happy they were. It mattered deeply to me that they felt that way, but I know how hard it is to give up your babies and let somebody else take your creative vision and move outside of the lane that you're in. And so I sort of anticipate that that's going to be a hard thing. And so I want to create a space where we then can live in a world that is that lives alongside but can move forward on its own. But she loves it, which makes us so happy.
It's amazing. I love that insight. That's really great for all the content creators who are, joining us and want to know how you do that kind of adaptation. So this one comes from Tina, and Tina said, you all spoke about the myth of science, the idea of a white man in a white lab coat. Tech and AI is also a really big part of our future and present. Part of the problem is that I don't see a lot of positive female representation in media for tech and AI. Are there any plans on portraying a positive female character in those fields like computer science and AI?
We do have that is true. I think in general in STEM and AI, there's a lack of representation for girls, but also for people of color in general. So I think, yes, in the future, you will see a character who is very much representative of the tech tech AI space. And it's not a girl, but it is a character of color. So yes and no.
I love that you make that point that, yeah, there isn't enough representation. And also I love that everybody wants to know what's happening next. Everyone's so curious. What are the next characters? So I think we have time for one more question. And this one comes from Jasmine, and she wants to know, which of the episodes are you most proud of?
That is a hard one, because they're like your babies, all of them. So it's hard to choose which one. But I think for me, I think the ones that don't obviously have science in them, that in the way that you would think, are probably my favorites, just because we're able to really illustrate that idea that we were talking about earlier, which is that science is just all around you, it's in everything. So we have there's an episode like we talked about tracking down a stinky smell, or trying to figure out how to peel a banana, trying to figure out how to bake a cake. Like all of those episodes to me that don't, you may start watching the episode and start to think, where does the science come in this? And it does, because it's everywhere. And I feel like, yeah, those are my favorites. The ones that kind of catch you by surprise in that way.
Yeah, I was actually going to say 12 Angry Birds, because it was when we kind of locked into such a playful sensibility and the kind of sort of storytelling that I would do on any show. But here it was science. And like, that was really like that sort of evolution was after Kerri came on and started really running the writing room and had this great group of writers, just so smart and funny. And they just really didn't, as what I'm always looking for writers for kids, for kids content, they clearly didn't see a box of like, we're writing a science show. They were like, we think it'd be really funny if they think the cat's going to get offed or something. And they have an entire trial. And, there's such like all of that nuance in the family where, her brother's playing the bailiff, and her mom is like, has things to do, but she still somehow becomes the judge in this trial. And you can sort of sense that she's like, it's really funny, but she's also not the kind of, like, you can sense that she's got stuff she needs to go do. So it's a moment where the whole world really comes to life. And if you took out the science information in that episode, I'd still want to watch it and think it was fun. And Kerri really just like really expanded and found all of that stuff. And she and her writing room are fantastic. Brown Bag, our studio in Dublin, just realizes everything so well. Yes, a lead female supervising director who who actually started as I think an assistant director on Doc McStuffins, and it was deeply important to me that studio always be lifting up female directors, because there aren't so many in animation. We're starting to see that open up. But yeah, all that's very intentional, to be sure that, I'm a big believer, and Kerri is a big believer in just making sure that at least several times on any series, you're giving someone the job, that like be the one who gives them the leap to the job. And we did that in a couple of really key roles here, and it has all paid off, and just means there are very, very different voices in the room, as there should be.
I'm just going to jump in with a question. So obviously we have a global audience, and how widely distributed or how widely dubbed is Ada Twist, so that parents and children all over the world can watch the series?
As far as I know, the show is pretty widely available worldwide. It's available in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. Like I think that's one of the benefits of being at Netflix, is that it's, kind of you're kind of leading, knowing you're creating the show, knowing that that's what's going to happen when it airs. It's going to be for an international audience. So yeah, the show is available, widely available in
every language. It's dubbed.
Yeah.
It's dubbed everywhere. Yeah.
Lisa, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one more here. They want to know, did you envision your work in classrooms? Do you think this would be a classroom friendly or something good to share in a middle school situation?
I think so, definitely. I think it will be really fun to play an episode of Ada Twist in school, because I think it shows, again, that hopefully some kids watch it and see, oh, wow, I didn't know that scientists are involved in baking cakes or cookies or creating, a garden, trying to figure out how to grow a garden on Mars. That's, alluding to one of our live action segments, or, figuring out how plants grow in the desert, or you love lizards, you can study that. You know what I mean? Like, my hope is that kids watch it and think, oh, wow, I had no idea that the world of science was so open to me, and hopefully inspire, future kids to explore that in the future and to study that in the future. So yeah, I can definitely see it in classrooms, and it'll be fun. It'll be like a fun rainy day, throw on an episode of Ada Twist and learn some science stuff while watching a really fun episode.
Yeah.
Well, we know from when we did our Portray Her study, which was in partnership with IFTHEN, that, Doc McStuffins was cited with no help from us as a reason why girls were pursuing, education in STEM. And we just believe that the perfect combination of Ada Twist will do the same as well. And is there anything else that you want to convey to our viewers before we end?
Kerri?
I mean, I think what I was starting to say in my last answer really covers it, that, if you want to, whatever you want to do, I think for me, a larger passion of mine is like, whatever you want to do, hopefully there is a possibility for you to do that. And I think a lot of people seeing that possibility is seeing it. So hopefully Ada does that for people. They can see in the now 60 stories that we've created, with 60 scenarios and 60 different types of sciences, subjects within the sciences, that they'll see that they can do really anything. And, I think it's really important that Ada Twist, a little Black girl, is at the head of this show, because as we know, the numbers are really low for girls, especially girls of color, as you were saying earlier, in STEM fields, and to show that it's not as daunting or inaccessible as it may have been thought of as before.
And for content creators, you know, there aren't that many women of color and women running shows either. And Kerri is doing that. And the show is working on all of those different levels. I just would say, like, you can have as much fun and create content that is as engaging as anything that doesn't have a mission, and also have the mission in it. And that's so much of the work that we've been doing together. And we, you know, go out there and have fun. It's so great if you get to work in this business, but also try to put some meaning into what you're doing. It will pay back, because kids are consuming this content. We have a lot of responsibility, and we can do it without it feeling like vegetables, I think.
Well, passion and purpose has certainly paid off for both of you. And as we say at the Institute, if she can see it, she can be it. So I just want to thank Chris and Kerri and our ASL interpreter, Joe. Thank you,
Joe.
And everybody, keep tuning in to Ada Twist. And thank you for tuning in today. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.